Good afternoon. I am so delighted to be here. And related to that, there are people that I should thank who made this whole thing happen so that I could actually speak in relation to this exhibition. So I'd like to thank Anne Lafont, Denise Morel, Cécile Debray, and Scarlett Relique, and at Columbia Institute for Ideas and Imagination, Yves Grinstead, and Marie Dorigny. Thank you all so much. The title of my talk is Model Athlete, Race, Technology, and Boxer Alfonso Teofilo Brown. Images of glamorized black male athletes are ubiquitous in contemporary American and global culture. For example, in this 2016 Nike advertisement for Kobe Bryant's 11-line Black Mamba, Nike depicts Kobe Bryant as a conjured enigma. They offer up an idealized heat-retaining cranium in profile as the visual summation of his extraordinary skills on the basketball court. His head emerges from a red and black formless energy source. Photographer's lighting accentuates high cheekbones and flawless glowing skin. This is supposedly the unvarnished natural skin of men, where shine and shadow are valued as go-to strategies for playing up manly angularity. Kobe's image codifies a carefully sculpted masculinity that translates the veracity of these technologies for the internet, magazines, and billboards. We take images such as these for granted in the 21st century. But this merger of glamour, the unattainable, and black male athletic bodies is relatively new. The black athlete as aesthetically glamorized object first appeared in 1927 Paris. It burst forth in an image, particularly this one, of Panamanian boxer Alfonso Teofilo Brown, bantamweight champion from 1929 to 1926, on one of the most widely circulated popular sports weeklies of the mid-1920s, Match L'Entrant. And from here forward, I'll just refer to it as Match. Match had 400,000 subscribers in France, the French colonies in Africa, and the Americas in 1927 when this issue was published. Thus far, I haven't found other depictions of this type in any popular media in the Americas or Europe in this moment or before. So I believe the images of Brown published in Match are the earliest depictions of this figuration in mass-produced publications. Glamour photography associated with the cinema and rotogravure, which in the 1920s was a cutting-edge photomechanical printing process, were critical in conceptualizing and creating Brown's image as a glamorous, unattainable black athlete. Studio photographers, art directors, layout artists, and printing technicians at Match shaped a new representation of the black male body in high optical fidelity that rendered Brown as a modern surface. In thinking of Brown's image as a surface, I take my cue from Anne Lin Chang's contention that skin is, quote, a remarkably layered construct, end quote. Mass media's use of a black male body to articulate ethereal light attached to photography's associations of realism stood out to me as distinctive. It defied the prevailing trends in 1920s Paris, where visual representations of phenotypically black men were dominated by graphic illustrations with flat, opaque colors, exaggerated physiognomies of U.S. minstrelsy in geometric forms. Paul Colin draws on visual tropes from U.S. minstrelsy to depict black male jazz musicians on the poster for the 1925 performance, La Revue Nègre. You can see the similarities in the exaggerated grins and cartoonish round eyes on the cover of the sheet music for U.S. songwriter Ernest Hogan's 1896 ragtime hit, All Coons Look Alike to Me, on the far side. Golin's lithograph from another portfolio employs similar visual codes in facial features, but this time it merges with the 1920s Art Deco style. The black figure, as you can see in the center, has a back that is acutely arched. His skin is monochromatic and absent of nuanced suggestions of an underlying skeletal structure or physiognomical indicators like creases and folds that give rise to the smile, which is yet again the broad, humanly impossible rictus grin of minstrelsy. Sports cartoons, a burgeoning genre in the early years of the 20th century, was another major place where viewers encountered blackness as image. Before Brown's 1926 arrival in Paris, black men in these cartoons were primarily characterized by excessiveness in size, muscularity, and brute strength. This coincides with the fact that black athletes in Paris, who were concentrated in the boxing world, were primarily heavyweights. The majority were black boxers from the U.S. who traveled to Paris in the beginning of 1907, searching for greater opportunities in the ring. Racism in the United States limited their ability to fight for the largest prizes and most prestigious titles. Historian Michel Fabre points out that they were, quote, a highly visible group in Paris by 1910, end quote. This cartoon, you can see the artist portrays African-American boxer Jack Johnson, and there he is on this side, as a jovial giant, certainly not worthy of serious consideration beyond his sheer physical might. On the other hand, in the far side, the artist depicts Johnson as a brawny, savage beast surrounded by evidence of his violent actions. Thinking about the image of Brown, I call your attention to the newspaper's printing process. Most people think of this kind of image in newspapers as a photograph, but that's not technically correct. They're photomechanical reproductions, meaning, according to a definition dated 1890, that they have been produced through, quote, processes in which, by the aid of light and in connection with chemical and mechanical treatment, printing surfaces are prepared to be used for multiplying impressions without the further aid of light, end quote. The photomechanical process itself was crucial to the generation of the iconographic type of the glamorous black athlete in mass culture. The process takes place after an image has been captured on film. It's the method in which the image is translated from film to the newspaper, the actual newsprint paper. We don't think much about this phase of reproducing images anymore because technology, like what's found in the iPhone, for example, shrinks the time of the process to a split second. By the time you lift your finger from the button, the image appears on your phone. But now I want you to think about the process of reproduction because the innovation of early 20th century rotogravure from halftone was a dramatic transformation for depicting phenotypically black skin and representing notions of blackness in newspapers. In this image, you have tight close-ups featuring the heads of Brown and French boxer Edouard Mascal. and they fill the space rather than the arms and legs that actually activate boxing. Most of Brown's face is enveloped in a shimmering pool of light, one of the ways that this image defies, or at least elides, the usual racial categorizations of the era's mass market publications. Through lighting and retouching, his complexion largely matches Mescal's. Brown's lively eyes are open and engaging. Flecks of white generated by the reflections of the photographer's lights activate the dark color and draw the viewer's eyes in his direction. The image is situated in conversation with glamour portrait photography related to the cinema, which was then ascended in the United States and very popular in Paris. In visual terms, this kind of photography engaged innovative and imaginative lighting, composition techniques like cropping, and soft focus effects, which were firmly in place by 1915. These strategies evoke otherworldly light radiating from bodies, concomitantly locating glamour within and also seamless with the surface. You can see a clear relationship between the image of Brown and this one of film star Rudolph Valentino. Photography's role in this intertwined process is all the more remarkable in light of its tacit biases. Richard Dyer has observed that, quote, the photographic apparatus was developed with white people in mind. Photographing non-white people is typically construed as a problem in white. The sheer fact that Match imaged Brown this way is extremely significant. To do so required that they set aside the perspective that phenotypically black skin could only support the notion of blacks as savage other. Let's look at how rotogravure compares to the photomechanical printing technologies of the mid-1920s. The halftone process on this side dominated in mass publications before Match debuted in 1926. Halftone is a kind of engraving that used a grid-like screen to codify dots of different sizes with the same intensity. Here's an image of Brown reproduced via the halftone process. And if you look at his face, it's barely discernible. His skin reads like a blotchy, rough patchwork of crude textures. It didn't matter if the original photograph contained tonal nuances or a sharply focused subject, because that image was reproduced in the halftone process. Rotogravure takes its name from the photogravure printing process. It's an adaptation of a textile printing cylinder with the intaglio printing process of photogravure. In rotogravure, positive prints of the selected images were made in the desired size on individual pieces of supple, transparent celluloid film, which were then etched onto the cylinder. They were then cut up at will, glued next to one another, or even on top of each other with an adhesive, and mounted on a transparent surface with great inventiveness. The film images could be retouched and manipulated. Historian Michel Frisot declares that this process of assembling films carrying photographs, text, and headlines was, quote, the most innovative stage of rotogravure, end quote. The layering of different tones creates a complex tonal surface, enhanced by rotogravure's ability to translate those subtle tones. Rotogravure's impact on black phenotype in mass-produced publications is a representational revolution of the first order. Black phenotypes benefited greatly from its subtle gradations, from the lightest grays to the darkest blacks. Those kinds of subtle tones were impossible to achieve in halftone. Rotogravure had the potential of rendering black bodies as human beings, if that was how they were represented in the original photographic image. Photo news magazines such as Vue in France and Life magazine in the US, which emerged after Match, would have been impossible without rotogravure. A few publications in Germany and in the United States employed rotogravure beginning in 1910 and 1913. In 1926 Paris, only three other publications, two devoted to the theme of war, World War I, and one sports news weekly, Le Miroir des Sports, employed it. Let me show you what that looks like. Notably, only the French sports weeklies directed rotogravure technology at phenotypically black skin. However, a comparison between the two reveals the distinction of Matiss's use of glamour portrait photography strategies that reoriented the mass public sensorium regarding images of black men. This image set that reorientation into motion. Brown's smile is rendered as a subtle, elegant orifice that emits light and amplifies the wattage of his glowing visage. This is an expression of seduction. Brown smiles flirtatiously at someone outside of the pictorial field. His parted lips expose gleaming white teeth and a hint of tongue. One can almost feel the breath from his open mouth. The viewer is drawn into an intimate sphere, close enough for a kiss. But the ethereal quality of light keeps them at bay. Brown's image is both aspirational and unattainable. He is a surface that is inhuman, not debased like the slave or the minstrel, but exalted, superhuman. For phenotypically black bodies, this is complicated because in a field of representations where they primarily appear as opaque forms and caricatures, this new type, even as it aligns Brown with what is considered ideal, arcs over the category of human, seemingly reserved exclusively for non-blacks. So, why didn't Match use the tropes of the menacing black brute to represent Brown? I argue that his particular body presented ways for Match to depict a different kind of blackness, what I call Latinized blackness, which is a tempered version of the codes of blackness, in this case, tied to the U.S. heavyweight boxers. Latin blackness connects France's early 19th century endeavors to expand their empire to include what Napoleon III called Latin America, with their perceptions that the inhabitants of the Spanish and Portuguese Americas possessed so-called Latin blood that mitigated African and indigenous ancestry. The lens of Latin blackness rendered Brown's Panamanian body as relatively assimilable compared to colonial Africans, Haitians, blacks from the English-speaking Caribbean, and African Americans. His difference could be framed as Latinness, making him more closely aligned to the Sports Weekly's design of modern male athletic bodies as sleek and streamlined. Match conceived of itself as a new sports newspaper that offered groundbreaking strategies for visual representation of sports. It asserted this image via its large format, measuring 11 by 17.5 inches, eye-catching single and double-page photo montages, as you see here, which were only possible because of rotogravure, idiosyncratic type designs, numerous photographic images, and cutting-edge rotogravure photomechanical printing process. Brown shared black phenotype with the other black boxers, but he stood out from them because he was a bantamweight, the lightest weight classification in boxing at the time. He was 5 feet 10 inches, yet weighed only 118 pounds, making him at least one head, if not two, above most fighters in his weight class. In 1927, he was the only phenotypically black bantamweight fighter among a strong field of white French bantamweight fighters. In the 1930s, black Cuban boxers Kid Tunero over here and Kid Chocolate on the other side joined Brown in Paris in the bantamweight class. Match portrayed them relatively similar to Brown, Latinizing their blackness by rendering them unthreatening and erasing boxing's signs of violence. In contrast, this image of heavyweight U.S. boxer George Godfrey exudes intimidation and danger. Brown's first bout on November 10, 1926, fortuitously aligned with the emergence of Match, launched the day before on November 9th. Oh, so wait, his first bout was on November 10th. The newspaper was launched November 9th. In the ring, he bounced constantly and lightly on both falls of his feet. He was a precursor of Muhammad Ali. He had a very distinct boxing style. So instead of a flat foot movement where the boxers move forward, he was constantly bouncing on the balls of his feet, ultimately throwing a few strategically placed blows to end the fight. So basically, he's redirecting people's eyes because he's moving around the ring. And so they have to look at him and his body. And then, somewhat seemingly inconsequentially, he'll throw a punch, and that knocks out the fighter. Brown boxed in front of audiences that numbered between 10 to 20,000 fans, far beyond the audiences of Josephine Baker. As world bantamweight champion, Brown appeared on 5 additional covers of Match. That's almost half of the 12 total covers of the Sports Weekly featuring men of color. In conclusion, production staff at Match saw in Brown an opportunity to introduce a seductive new component to sports imagery. By allowing an unprecedented level of glamour photography's detail and nuance in the photomechanical reproduction of Brown's black skin, rotogravure positioned him as a modern surface. Brown was the center of the dissemination of the first imagery that constructed black male athletes as glamorous objects of desire. He may be inaccessible as a radiant surface, but his image is infinitely reproducible and reachable. Rotogravure technology is not neutral. It was manipulated by a team of people consisting of photographers, layout artists, art directors, and printing technicians. Its ability to translate photography's creative possibilities was showcased by Match, in the process conferring aesthetic value onto sports imagery. Their staff's deep investment in negotiating the tones of phenotypically black skin could only be realized in mass-produced images because of rotogravure. Rotogravure created a representational shift, enabling Match to visually encode new ways of imagining phenotypically black men. Without rotogravure, the revelation of structure and detail so germane to desire would not have been possible. Recognition of Brown's elegance and power ignited a slow trajectory, culminating in today's commonplace visual expressions of black athletes and desirable, like Kobe here. Technology, Latin blackness, and notions of celebrity and modernity regarding athletes came together in the creation of an irresistible and unattainable object, Alfonso Brown. Thank you.
Une question pour Sylvie Chalaï. Merci infiniment pour les 2 communications. Question peut-être très naïve, mais quand j'ai vu un Américain à Paris avec Jane Kelly, j'étais très petite, je me posais absolument beaucoup de questions que je ne me posais pas du tout. Est-ce qu'à l'époque, que Jane Kelly, disons, silhouette de chocolat, est-ce que ça a été quelque chose de...
Excusez-moi, je vais essayer de donner un micro.
Ou est-ce que ça a été un hommage Quelle a été la réception? Est-ce qu'en France aussi, on a vu que c'était que Jane Kelly rendait hommage à Chocolat, ou est-ce que ça a été aussi de l'usurpation de l'art de cet artiste-là?
Donc je réponds comme ça? Vous n'entendez pas, il faut le micro, je ne sais pas. Merci beaucoup. Alors, je vais répondre, bien sûr, donc à la question de Sophie Proust, mais je voudrais juste dire une chose que je voulais dire tout à l'heure et puis que j'ai complètement oublié. Comme j'ai le micro, je vais le dire tout de suite. Et ça a du lien avec la question que tu poses. C'est vraiment, je dirais combien j'admire en fait le travail d'où est parti le projet Modèles noirs, et notamment le travail, je dirais quasiment archéologique, de reconstitution et d'aller chercher justement donc la personne. Quelle était la personne qui jouait ce rôle bizarre dans l'Olympia et dont on ne parle pas alors qu'elle est essentielle au tableau et qu'on utilise toujours comme anecdote. Et donc je voudrais vraiment dire toute mon admiration à Denise. Voilà, donc oui. Vous avez compris ce que j'ai dit? Oui, ça va. Et aussi, Anne Lafont, c'est très important, enfin tout le travail qui est fait aussi par Anne Lafont. Donc, parce que justement, si le film de donc Jane Kelly, réalisé par Minelli, rend hommage au monde noir, et justement à ce monde noir qui est un monde caché, qu'on ne voit pas dans les films, parce qu'il y a donc l'interdiction d'une présence noire à l'image, et que toutes ces comédies musicales, depuis les années 20, donc les années 30, enfin après le démarrage vraiment de la premier âge, donc dans les années 30, début du chanteur de jazz, et puis ensuite on a donc tous ces films, c'est des films dans lesquels il y a du jazz, on danse la danse des Noirs, il y a de l'appropriation évidemment, puisqu'on est fasciné, mais en même temps on ne veut pas de Noir à l'image. Et tout le travail de Minelli, ça a été, beaucoup de ces films sont des films dans lesquels il y a des choses cachées. Il suffit de voir Le Pirate, il y a plein des éléments qui traitent de la culture noire, mais de manière indirecte. Et je vais vous dire, les grands spécialistes de cinéma, qui étaient grands spécialistes de Minelli, même encore dans les années 50, et il faudrait même voir encore, il y a un livre sur la comédie musicale qui sort en 90, je crois, qui pense que c'est en fait le danseur qui dansait avec la Goulue, et on ne pense même pas à Chocolat. C'est-à-dire que l'ignorance du rapport effectivement de la présence noire à Paris, de la figure de Chocolat qui a été complètement oubliée aussi, et surtout un Chocolat qui danse et pas un Chocolat qui prend des coups de pied au cul, eh bien ça c'est pas présent. Donc à l'époque, en fait, ça passe entre les gouttes et on ne voit pas que ça parle de ça, que le film de Minelli, Un Américain à Paris, parle de ça. Pas du tout. Voilà. Je sais pas si j'ai répondu, sinon on pourra en rediscuter après.
Autre question? Other questions? I'll hold on.
I don't want
Okay, pass it to whoever has to respond.
Hi, Lynette. Do I have to stand? Okay, I hurt my back today. Trying to get here. How are you, Lynette? Lyneise? I wanted to ask about the picture of the boxers, and I love the way you talked about the technologies and all of these things that we never think about. It really brings something more beautiful about it. But do you think they're at least exploiting a little bit of the comparisons of the heads, the straight noses and the straight foreheads and the square chin? I mean, that trope that we've seen many, many times that compares the quote-unquote nègre to the ideal. I know you mentioned that there is this notion of the ideal, but it seems it's they really zero in on the features between the two, and it's always complicated in France, right? It's never straightforward. So I'm not saying they were trying to denigrate him, but I do think those differences seem to be very pronounced.
Yes, actually, I do think that is happening, and I think that it's layered with one of the fact that boxing involves two people in opposition, so it automatically sets it up as one versus the other. And there are several covers where there are two boxers that are in profile where that gets played up. And if I had more time, I really would have gone into it because there's some really interesting details that are happening in this one. His face mimics they've retouched the Edouard Mascal's face so it mimics the womb of the Hellenistic boxer, the famous Greek sculpture, which was printed in match 2 months before this. And so there's a way in which they're endowing a nobility to his wounds even. There's a way that the double images also plays up the fact that Al Brown won the night before because they're elevating him. In a lot of the other images, they just show two boxers side by side. So whether it's deliberate or not, it's functioning in that way as a point of comparison, even as it plays into the comparison of the two boxers themselves, who are opponents in the ring. Very complicated.
Questions, more questions. Autre question. Yes, here.
I would just like to come back just to one point about Gene Kelly, because I was kind of slow in getting up. But for visitors, Gene Kelly was at the American Cultural Center, which is was right here in the years of 40s and the 50s. And was right here on Boulevard Raspail. And also Leslie Caron, who was a young dancer, she also lives very close by. So that's just a point of interest. And the American Cultural Center was very, very integrated at that time. So Gene Kelly had a lot of interaction with a lot of black dancers. So that's just an interesting point for the visitors who are here.
Merci. C'est un petit point de précision sur le quartier et Leslie Caron et Jane Kelly vivant dans le quartier et en interaction donc avec les artistes noirs. Je crois qu'il n'y avait pas de questions à moins que j'ai... Merci. Okay.
D'abord, merci pour vos deux présentations qui ont très bien fonctionné en contrepoint. Et c'est une question pour la première présentatrice. J'ai beaucoup apprécié votre présentation qui dénote le renouvellement de l'art pictural avec l'art de la silhouette et un nouveau regard sur les Noirs. Néanmoins, on ne peut pas ignorer, par exemple, dans le tableau de Toulouse-Lautrec, si on pouvait le revoir, on voit le postérieur de chocolat mis en parallèle avec un poulet sur la table juste à côté. Ça, c'est la première chose. Ou bien le vocabulaire utilisé pour décrire cette cakewalk. J'oublie les mots exacts, mais décrite comme une maladie. Donc, j'aimerais bien que vous commentiez ça. Parce qu'en fait, toutes ces peintures sont réalisées quand même par les yeux des Blancs, des hommes blancs. Donc ça, on ne peut quand même pas ignorer que même si ça a renouvelé l'art, et même si ça a renouvelé le regard sur les Noirs, il y a quand même, on continue à véhiculer des stéréotypes.
Alors, merci beaucoup de me poser cette question parce que, comme vous le savez, en quelques minutes, on ne peut pas donc déployer toute sa pensée. Donc, ça permet vraiment de pouvoir être plus précis aussi. Enfin, en tout cas, de pouvoir ajuster également plus clairement mon propos, puisqu'il ne s'agit pas du tout, je ne parle absolument pas... mon propos n'est pas de montrer que le regard des Blancs renouvelle le regard dans ces années-là sur les Noirs. C'est simplement que c'est très important aussi de penser que les Noirs ne sont pas dans ce moment-là où, effectivement, on essaye de capter quelque chose, où les silhouettes apparaissent. Ça n'empêche absolument pas un regard hiérarchisant, surplombant, dénigrant. à l'égard donc de ces artistes qu'on ne comprend pas, dont on ne voit pas véritablement. Enfin, ils sont dans une espèce d'altérité et on utilise énormément de choses pour s'en moquer. Regardez l'ensemble du tumulte noir. On retient toujours la photo enfin, de la lithographie que je vous ai montrée, bon, qui est, elle, très soft. Encore qu'il y a les bananes, hein, bien sûr. Mais l'autre que je vous ai montré, donc l'image finalement simiesque, elle n'est pas loin. Et la relation à l'animal, et notamment au singe, n'est pas loin. Pourtant, je dirais, c'est pour ça, moi je travaille vraiment sur la question du marronnage, c'est qu'au cœur même de cette situation excessivement coloniale, avec un regard hiérarchique surplombant, eh bien, les artistes donc, africains, afro-antillais, africains-américains ont trouvé un espace de marronnage, de liberté, et ils ont fait la nique, en fait, à ces artistes qui tentaient de les capter. Parce que quelque part, eh bien, malgré eux, il y a quelque chose d'eux, de ces artistes afro, présents dans ces tableaux, au-delà de l'image noire qui est la leur. Et chez Chocolat, c'est très très net. Évidemment qu'aucun des dessins de Toulouse-Lautrec ne sont des dessins qui magnifieraient la réalité magistrale du noir. Enfin, et même, d'ailleurs, c'est absolument pas dans cette logique-là. Il est peint de dos, il a une tête écrasée. Donc on se dit, l'anthropologie, elle est bien, elle est là, hein, le regard anthropologique, il est proche du singe. Enfin, quand on regarde le dessin en lui-même, il n'est pas du tout anoblissant, je dirais, pour la réalité physique et charnelle de Chocolat. Mais par contre, quelque chose d'autre est capté, à leur insu peut-être, mais en tout cas qui est là et qui laisse des traces très très fortes. À tel point qu'aujourd'hui, eh bien, précisément, je veux dire, les artistes africains-américains, afro-antillais, qui étaient présents dans le Paris donc de ce début du siècle, ils étaient excessivement nombreux. Et du coup, on les a occultés, oubliés, on a fait table rase parce qu'il y a aussi, après les années 60, la difficulté d'encaisser les indépendances et la décolonisation en France. Donc ça a été aussi une raison. Je pense, en tout cas, il faut réfléchir à cette occultation. Aujourd'hui, un travail comme celui que vous faites avec le musée d'Orsay, c'est justement de ressortir ces images, de ressortir ces présences. Et ce qui est très important, je pense, c'est de mettre des noms. C'est pour ça que je disais tout à l'heure combien la démarche de Denise est essentielle. C'est un fil tiré qui, j'espère, va emmener une ribambelle d'autres images, parce qu'il y a l'or, évidemment, mais Luce, Lucie, et puis toutes sortes. Ce sont des présences avec des personnes, des noms, mais qui n'ont pas été représentés véritablement, mais qui sont là, qui sont encore là, peut-être d'ailleurs, qui nous observent peut-être. En tout cas, ça me paraît vraiment, vraiment, vraiment important de bien voir qu'on est dans ce paradoxe-là, dans cette complexité-là. Hein. Le racisme est bien au coin, au détour de cette réalité-là, mais il n'empêche que la création afro, pour le dire simple, et donc ce que j'appelle la vibration noire ou la vibration jazz, elle était là et elle continue aujourd'hui de vibrer avec nous. Voilà.
Okay, is there one more? We have time for one more question. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for this session, for the good papers. I want to ask a question about the fighters, if I may. I wonder how to bring in discussions of the soldiers who were here earlier than this, and photographic representations of James Reese Europe and others fighting in another context.
There were quite a few images of the soldiers. There were photographic images that were printed in the newspapers, but they were all done in halftone. So if you were to compare those images to the images of Brown, you're not going to see the same things, because the technology that the image was being reproduced onto the newspaper obscured quite a bit of what you might have seen had you been looking at a photograph that might be in an archive at the BNF. So, but also there's a way in which they were not using the visual language of glamour. They weren't coming in for tight close-ups. They weren't using soft focus on those images. They weren't playing with just a face to think about how one might communicate personality in the way that they were doing it in the photographs for cinematic publicity photographs. So those photographs were there. They were all circulating simultaneously, but only the publications that used rotogravure combined with the language of glamour portrait photography could produce an image that looked like that. All the other photographs were going to have the dot screen pattern of halftone equally as present as the image, which means you can't see one without the other. And the halftone just doesn't pick up subtle tones. So what you'll get are blotchy images. So yes, there are a lot of images circulating in newspapers, but because those newspapers were not using rotogravure, and because they weren't using this, they weren't thinking about creating this new, sleek, modern form, that's why they used the glamour photography tropes. Because as you saw with the other image from Les Miroirs des Sports, they weren't using glamour photography. And so you still got a somewhat grainy image because it was shot at a distance and it was shot with the camera that seemingly didn't have a fast shutter speed, so it couldn't actually capture just the single image. There was a lot of blurring, and so it picked up the blurring in that image too. So it's the technology that's used to print it, the photographic image for newspaper, that's one of the critical pieces here.